Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the San Francisco Interfaith Council online briefing for faith leaders. Today's program will be shining a spotlight on the San Francisco Latino Task Force COVID-19 response effort. This program is hosted by the San Francisco Interfaith Council and supported by the Joint Information Center of the San Francisco COVID Command Center. A few housekeeping items. Audio, video, and chat will be monitored and recorded for record keeping, training purposes, and quality assurance. By default, all participants will be muted and video turned off to minimize distractions. And to submit a question or comment, select the chat button at the bottom of your screen and send a message to Q&A. These questions and comments will be collected and shared with the Interfaith Council at the end of the meeting for a response. A reminder that everyone living and working in San Francisco is eligible to get tested for COVID-19. To learn more about the details, visit sf.gov/gettestedsf or simply call 311. Please help everyone enjoy Labor Day weekend safely. Wear a face covering properly, social distance at all gatherings, don't share common objects, and please help spread the word. As trusted messengers, our community safety is a community effort. And finally, once again, welcome to the San Francisco Interfaith Council online briefing for faith leaders. And I will now hand it over to the Executive Director of the SFIC, Michael Pappas.
Thank you, Lynn, and thank you to the wonderful team at the COVID Command Center's Joint Information Center Virtual Outreach Team for all of the support you've given us. This is our 21st gathering, and your support and technical assistance has been invaluable. Good morning, I'm Michael Pappas, and on behalf of the San Francisco Interfaith Council, I want to welcome you to this morning's online briefing for faith leaders. From the outset of the pandemic, almost 50% of San Francisco's total COVID-19 cases have been diagnosed among Hispanic and Latino residents. That statistic far outweighs infection rates reported among other communities and raises concerns about health inequities in San Francisco, given that Hispanic and Latino individuals comprise roughly 15% of our city's overall population. As such, the San Francisco Department of Public Health has partnered with the San Francisco Latino Task Force to strengthen education, community engagement, and access to diagnostic testing in areas where new coronavirus impact is most severe. The San Francisco Latino Task Force offers a range of resources related to COVID-19 support and most recently announced a disaster relief assistance program to provide financial support to undocumented people facing challenges amidst the pandemic. This initiative is just one of several relief programs established in the wake of the virus outbreak. This week's online briefing for faith leaders, hosted by the San Francisco Interfaith Council and supported by the COVID Command Center's Joint Information Center Virtual Outreach Team, will shine a light on the critical and timely work of the San Francisco Latino Task Force and its COVID-19 response efforts. At this time, allow me to introduce the Chairman of the Board of the San Francisco Interfaith Council, Kaushik Roy.
Thank you. And as Michael mentioned, my name is Kaushik, and it's my distinct pleasure on behalf of our board of directors to welcome all of you, those of you who are tuning in to listen, and of course, our collection of guests as well who we'll be hearing from. Michael, I just want to give a special acknowledgement to you and your partner in crime, Cynthia Sambucas. As I'm fond of saying, I don't think there are two people you would find in any nonprofit anywhere that accomplishes as much as the two of you do. This incredible series that's been going on now for 21 weeks is just one of so many new responsibilities that have been placed on your shoulders since the pandemic started. So thank you for that. And I am really looking forward to this morning's conversation as well. So I want to acknowledge Valerie, our keynote presenter. Thank you for being here. And we always have an esteemed panel, esteemed group of panelists, but it's nice to see some familiar faces Mario and Monique, who I serve on the board with, and Miguel, who I've known for many years personally. So thank you all as well for being here this morning. Want to give a special welcome to any of you who are joining us for the first time. Thank you. At the beginning of every Interfaith Council meeting or event, we have an interfaith statement that we like to read. So I'll just do that now and we will go from there. This is an interfaith community. Whatever our individual belief, it can be freely expressed here with no apologies. If we are invited to offer a prayer in this setting, it should be offered according to the tradition with which we identify. If we are invited to speak on a subject from the perspective of our tradition, we are free to do so without fear of offending those who come from another tradition. We come together as people of faith to learn from each other that we might better understand the multiplicity of faith traditions in our city and in our world. Good morning, everyone.
Thank you, Kaushik, and thank you for your leadership as our board chair, and also for the incredible work that you're doing through the Shanti Project, which you are the executive director of. Bless you. This morning's meditation is going to be offered by Heather Lee, the Senior Program Coordinator at San Francisco Community Agencies Responding to Disaster. Heather wears a unique hat within that organization in that she is the coordinator in San Francisco and environs for the Listos program, which is an important statewide program that is offering consultation on disaster relief to our state's Latino population. And so without further ado, to ground us in a meditative moment, we welcome Heather Lee.
Thank you, Michael. Good morning, everyone. I really do want to thank you, Michael, for your gentle persistence and gentle invitation to offer this meditation many times over the last year. And I'm very grateful that that opportunity has happened now and that I can have a moment to slow down. Something that I've started noticing as we grind into the 6th month of living with the coronavirus is that I'm grateful for my job. I think everyone, even in a high-risk job, has that moment because work keeps us busy. It occupies our time and our thoughts, and it lets us compartmentalize. Because jobs are about doing, and I have certainly been busy. And in the busyness, I can forget that my employment is not my vocation, and that what the world needs from each of us in this interminable moment is perhaps more of our vocation, more of our soul work, and less of our job work. And my soul work is grieving. My soul work is being in the presence of loss and fear and death and transition, and giving focus to that transition so that it can be honored as the sacred work that it is. And sadly, we aren't anywhere near that yet with the coronavirus. It's going to keep hurting people and separating people and killing people for a while longer. I don't know how long. But what I can give from my vocation is this moment to be present and to simply be. So I invite you wherever you are to take this moment. Put your feet flat on the floor, drop your shoulders, rest your hands, maybe on the table, maybe on the arm of your chair, maybe in your lap. Let your fingers be loose. Close your eyes if that feels safe. And notice your breath. How is your breath? We have been so fearful of breath these last 6 months. Our breath has been poison. Is it hurting me? Is it hurting others? Our breath is not a virus, even if one is hitching a ride. Our breath is life, our life, the life of our families, the life of our communities and our countries and our humanity. I am, says the Abrahamic God. I am a complete breath. I inhale. am on exhale. I am. I am. I am. As you go through this meeting, this morning and day, this week, this month, even this year, I am breath. I am present. I am enough. You are enough, and we are blessed by your presence. And if you closed your eyes for this, you can start thinking about opening them. You can start wiggling your fingers and your toes and find your edges again. There are still some moments, and take them as you need them. And thank you for taking this moment to be with me and to simply be.
Thank you, Heather. Thank you for the permission to give us to breathe and to remind us of the gift of life. And what a beautiful transition into this morning's presentation. We are very, very blessed and privileged to have with us today Valerie Tullier-Laiwa, who is the coordinator of the San Francisco Latino Task Force. Valerie is a community activist. She has done incredible work with the San Francisco Human Rights Commission. Her very impressive bio has been published in the program and sent out several times. Valerie, I know that this task force has arisen as a response to the coronavirus. We are very grateful, as I mentioned, because the largest population to be impacted in San Francisco has been the Hispanic and the Latino population. Will you tell us the story of the task force, the vision of the task force, the work of the task force, and your hopes, and just share with us your important work?
Good morning. Thank you so much. First, I just want to thank you for the patience that you've had with me, just because I am so busy, and I appreciate that you have the understanding that your organization has the understanding that we all work on various timelines, and so I appreciate that. I want to thank Mariachis for introducing me to this group, and to Miguel Bustos that I've known for many years, and to anybody else on the phone on the link that I may know at the meeting. I just want to say that I appreciate this opportunity to share work, and you had all asked for a presentation, and it forced me to really kind of compile at least a piece of the work that we've done, and I'm so honored to share it with you. I asked how long did I have, and I said, I was thinking 15, 20 minutes, and then I heard about 30 minutes, and I said, what? I said, that's a long time. I don't know how I'm gonna fill it. And then as I started to do the PowerPoint, I thought, oh my God, I can go on for like an hour and a half, 2 hours, half a day, just to share with you all. But let's get started, and if we could pull the PowerPoint up, and I'll just start kind of talking to you. So the San Francisco Latino Task Force, next slide, please. So I just wanted to talk to you a little bit about the origins. Who are we, or how did we get started? We were a small group of longtime community district community activists and organizers, and we also had a staff representative from the San Francisco Human Rights Commission. So together when did it happen? It happened the first week of shelter in place. Why did it happen? Because we knew instinctively and intuitively that the pandemic would hit the Latino community really hard. It hadn't yet, but we knew it. We saw all the signs. And what is the Latino Task Force? It's a collective of about 30 plus CBOs. Initially, we were mission-based, and now we're citywide with government representatives. So I just want to just give you kind of the who and the when and the why and the what, but really, you know, to understand that the first week that shelter-in-place took place, we just knew that we had to do something. We had to respond immediately. And the first three things that we responded to was one, was outreach and communications, because we realized that Mission Street acted like they never even heard of the coronavirus. You know, people were congregating, small businesses were social distancing. So it was about to get the message out immediately to our community. The second priority was education. All of a sudden you had all these Spanish-speaking monolingual parents and other Latino parents home with their kids and have no idea, you know, did they have Wi-Fi? Did they have a Chromebook? And chances are they did not. So to try to link them to make sure they get access and to support the at-home learning. And then the third thing was food. We realized that people really needed to, you know, had a choice at that time. Were they going to pay rent or were they going to buy food? So we wanted to alleviate the need to worry about food. So the next slide, please. So I do want to acknowledge the San Francisco Human Rights Commission, and I want to acknowledge the leadership of Director Cheryl Davis. She has supported us from day one. She has tried to get us any type of resources, and I'll talk to you about that in a moment. But I just really wanted to acknowledge her leadership and really knowing that she needed to have a response for the Latino community. Next. So I want to acknowledge Mission Language and Vocational School, what AKA known as 701 Alabama, AKA known as Latino Task Resource Hub, AKA known as Latino Testing Site, Latino Task Force Essential Services Hub, and the Mission Food Hub. So this is located on 19th and Alabama. It's been around for years. And I believe that, you know, Rosario Naya, the former executive director, her spirit is watching down over us, and very pleased that her building, which was for the very first Centro El Obrero, which was the labor's union, and then now it has become a cultural hub, but in it we still have workforce programs such as a culinary program and a medical assistant program. So, and also it's been known as the Latino City Hall. Through these doors, there have been like Latino voter registration. We still hold the annual Cesar Chavez breakfast here. So I know that she's pleased in the spirit world that we have really continued to breathe life in this building. Next slide, please. So I want to just share some of the guiding values. Definitely our actions are community-led, community-driven, and community-implemented. This is extremely important as we work with city government officials to let them know that we are the boss here. We are the leaders, and that the organic neighborhood leadership must be respected and has the capacity and the skills to support what the community needs. I want to say that our work is based on our indigenous ancestors and practices, whether we realize it or not. So it's very important for me when I publicly speak to acknowledge the First Nations people. Where we stand here in San Francisco belongs to the Muwekma Ohlone people. They're still alive, but they, as many of us, have been evicted or relocated. But I do want to acknowledge the indigenous ancestors of this land. I also want to say that our work is spiritual at its core. It is to care for others and the community, to be who we are truly meant to be in our DNA. And that is so important. That is so important in how we have responded to COVID. We have responded with our heart and our spirit and our soul. The need to take care of others, the need to take care of the village, the need to take care of the elders, the young people, the women, all community here vulnerable communities, our unhoused. It's very important. And I think that, there's a lot of horrible things that this pandemic has imposed on us, but there's a lot of beauty that has come out of it. And this is one of them, that we're truly being the human beings that we're meant to be in our very core. I want to say that our work is multi-generational. We have young people, we have some youth interns, and we have people from all ages and walks of life that participate in the Latino Task Force. But we're definitely investing in our young people as the youth interns to share our leadership and our wisdom so that they can carry the torch later on as they grow up. And one of the things that I also want to say, just in terms of the young people, and I do have a slide later on, is that they too are being who they're supposed to be, that they're living an example of avoiding street activity. And I'll just leave it at that terminology. But they also, really want to learn how to be who they were born to be, that innocence, that love, and they're being able to express that in a safe place within the Latino Task Force. Our work is based on humility, dignity, respect, and of service to others. That is so important that, as we have, hundreds and hundreds of people standing in the food line, we treat them with respect because we know that they are in need of food. And who are we? We are no one. We are just to be of service to them. When people come to get tested, we are very clear about being kind to them. And I'll talk to you a little bit about other examples. Next slide, please. I just wanted to share with you that we have 13 plus active committees. These are some of the committees, and I thought about doing this presentation alone. This would probably take a couple hours if I were to talk to you about what each committee is doing. But I did just want to share that we run the whole spectrum of meeting the community's needs. And I just want to point out that we have the street needs assessment, and that is working with our unhoused residents, formerly known as homeless. And we're trying to make sure that they have food, water. We're insisting that the city make sure that we install showers and 24-hour bathrooms, and just making sure that their basic needs are met. And then we also have the Reentry and Violence Committee, and I just want to say that the Reentry Committee early on, a couple of its action items were, we knew that the jails, that all programs had ceased in the jails because of COVID. And so we were saying, okay, how can we serve, those the inmates who now no longer have any programming? So Director Davis donated over 200 books and workbooks, and we donated to the inmates of San Francisco jail so they could have something to do. The other thing that I want to say too is that also because of COVID, there was a stop on visits from parents with their children. So what we did was we brought that forward, and Supervisor Shaman Walton brought forth legislation so that inmates would be able to talk to their children over video conferencing. And the very first time it happened was on Mother's Day, where women were able to speak to their children on Mother's Day, and subsequently now parents do have visits with their children video conferencing. So I just want to point those out because I want to just explain to you really that the Latino Task Force have addressed the most vulnerable of our society. So again, I hope you've had a chance to just kind of briefly look at all of these committees, and then where you see the smaller bullets, those are subcommittees that have branched out of the larger committees. So next slide, please. So I want to talk to you mostly about the three major endeavors that we have right now. They're all important, but I want to talk about the Health Committee, the Essential Services Hub, and the Mission Food Hub. So what we have done with the Health Committee, and I will try to be as diplomatic and polite as I can, but I will say that that the Department of Health was overwhelmed with this pandemic. So what we actually did a study back in April with UCSF, and it was called Unidos en Salud. And what was developed out of there was a beautiful, beautiful kind of institutional and community partnership model. And so what we have shared, and what I want to share with you all today, what's really important is the test to community care. Not test to care, but test to community care. So we'll keep going. Next slide, please. So here we have to test first. And UCSF study tested in one mission district census tract that had predominantly a lot of Latinos. And here you see a setup at Garfield Park. We had, I think, 3 or 4 different locations: Leonard Flynn School, Parque Niños, and also Cesar Chavez School was a test site for, I think, one or 2 days. But this is in Garfield Park, where it was just a beautiful event with lots of volunteers. Next slide, please. And this is to community care. So what happens? Everybody says, we have to test, we have to test, we have to test. And I am totally in agreement with that. But what happens after the test? So that study was able to give us the data that we knew was already going on in our community, but for external forces, for the larger society, it showed that yes, excuse me, Latinos have had the most highest impact. And at one time, we knew that San Francisco General Hospital actually had 100% Latino monolingual in their ICU unit. And now I think it hovers probably about 80%. So anyway, so we test and we find out. So what the model with UCSF was to create a community wellness team. So what we would do is for the people who tested positive, we had a community of a team of 3 people who would contact them. What do you need? Do you need food? Do you need PPE? Do you need cleaning supplies? So here's a picture of our team members here. In the first slide above, they're preparing the packets. The second slide, they're loading up the car. And then in the last slide, we're dropping them off to the families. So, and we did safe delivery. We'd drop it off at the door and let them know. We would call them ahead of time so that they would be expecting it, and we try to be as discreet as possible so that there was no shame brought to that household. So this is very important, this community wellness team. We have yet to be funded for our current community wellness team, and we're definitely asking for funding, and I'll just leave it at that. So next slide, please. So out of the testing from UCSF, we began negotiating with the Department of Public Health. And so currently we have a testing hub at 701 Alabama, the slide I showed you earlier. And we test every Thursday from 10 to 3. We are very intentional and targeted about our outreach. We are focusing on Latinos, particularly Spanish speaking, the essential workers, because we know that they are the hardest hit. So here is our flyer. We do not have our flyer in English. It's only in Spanish. And then I'll talk to you about the picture that you see that's attached to our flyer. Next slide, please. And if somebody can give me like a 15-minute warning, I know how fast I'm going or slow. So this is what the testing setup looks like. And it's very, I tell you, I was up till like 1 o'clock last night trying to gather pictures, realizing I didn't have a lot of good pictures of our testing, but I do want to share with you. To the far left, it's kind of difficult to see, but you see a young man with a kind of a bright green jacket. He is actually escorting an elder. And behind him, if you can see, there's some white chairs. We have 4 lines when we do our testing. One line is for walk-ins. The second line is for essential workers. And then the third line has chairs for elders. So as soon as we see an elder or someone who, we think is an older adult, we ask them if they want to come have a seat. So we have chairs set up. And then behind that line, a little bit further, we have the line for what we call symptomatic. So those who are telling us when we're working the lines, oh, I've been having a fever, oh, my body aches. So if they share with us, or if they have a temperature, we pull them out of the line immediately. and we put them in the line behind these chairs they stand. But we don't call it symptomatic. Again, we're not trying to label or shame anyone. We call it urgent care. And people really don't know what the different lines are. They just, they're okay with it. The upper right picture, you see our registration table. We have volunteers. The young man with the braids came all the way down from Novato to help because he wanted to be involved. And then way in the background, you see a couple of tents. You see 3 canopies. One is our swabbing, our first swabbing tent. And then the second one is for urgent care so that we have, we keep them in a separate testing place. And then way in the back, you'll see a white canopy. That is for consult, because in our probably our second week or third week, there was a woman who was displaying symptomatic, a lot of symptoms. And we happened to have a doctor from DPH that day, and he gave her consult right there on the sidewalk. And to me, that was embarrassing, that people were looking like, why are they talking? So we set up this tent in case there's legal consult, and also whatever, questions they may have. And then of course, the bottom slide is where they're actually testing. Right now we partner, DPH partners with Color Lab. I want to sing their praises. They are efficient. The first 2 weeks of our testing, we were not getting our results for more than 2 weeks. And that is a disaster because it serves no purpose. So DPH immediately then began to contract with Colors, and now we are receiving results within 24 to 48 hours. And it's a nose swab, it's painless, and they're not going all the way up your nasal cavity, all the way up into your brains. They're not doing that anymore, which is really, really good. Okay, next slide, please. Next slide. Thank you. So this is the picture that's on our poster. And I just want to say what this beauty is about this, public-private community partnership. So the people that you see, the 2 sitting down and then the one on the far right, those are Mission Language Vocational School medical assistant students. So they graduated from the workforce program right here in the building. And they immediately began to support the testing unit. And so they were doing registration and, and helping out in any way, in any shape or capacity. All of them were bilingual. So the Color Lab realized, wow, we need some more bilingual, bicultural staff. So all 3 of them have been hired by Color Lab. And I believe that this is such a beautiful success story because this partnership has led to careers for these young people. Next slide, please. So I just want to quickly just tell you that, these to the left are folks that are from the Latino task force. The far left is Susana Rojas. She's the chair for the Outreach and Communications Committee. Francisco Herrera is next to her, and he works with the day laborers in Dolores Street. Of course, that's me, yours truly. And then to the right is John Jacobo, and he is the chair for the Health Committee and also the Small Business Committee. And then to our the picture to the right is Isela Ford and Oscar Macias. What we call them are our Latino allies within DPH. And so this partnership equals a community model. And they definitely support our leadership and do whatever they can within DPH to make sure that we get what we need. Next slide, please. Next slide. Okay, is it my computer? Are we frozen?
I think there may be a slight delay on your computer, Valerie.
Okay, all right. Oh, there we go. So I just
it?
want to just share with you what data tells us what we already knew. So this is just 2 dates, August 20th and August 27th. And this is here at the Mission Testing site. We did a total of 275, 15 were positive, 5.58 were percent positivity rate. On the 27th, it was 228, 15 positive, that's a 6.64% positivity rate. This is unacceptable. the going rate should be anywhere between 1% and 2%. So once again, the data is showing what we already know. And again, color has been able to give us the data almost immediately. Next slide, please. So this is now also the Latino Task Force is citywide, as I mentioned earlier. We started in the Mission, but now we've expanded to the Excelsior, to Visitation Valley, and to the Tenderloin. So the Excelsior then started testing, and they came and visited our hub, our testing hubs for best practices. And so now they've been testing every Monday at Crocker Amazon Park. Next, please.
Valerie, would you like me to change to the next slide deck?
Sure. I'm sorry. Next.
No worries.
Sorry.
We have about 9 minutes left.
Got it.
Okay.
Okay. About 9 minutes? Okay. I'll thank you so much for the time. See, I had no idea that, yeah. I definitely want, room for discussion and for any comments. So, and I definitely did have to send this in part two parts, because it was way too much for my computer to handle. We'll keep it rolling. And so I do want to say that our partnership in Excelsior, they're organized, their community is organized, and we respect their leadership, and they've called themselves Excelsior Strong. Oh, here we go, Excelsior Strong.
There we go.
So to the left, we have Patti Barrazas and Oscar Grande. And of course, there's our DPH ally in the back, Isela Ford. And then to the right, this is a lot of the Mission Testing Hub volunteers. John, Maria, and Edgar are from Clinica, and Susie is our site coordinator. So we made sure we were there for their first day to support their efforts and to make sure that things ran smoothly. Next slide. And what's on the table are care packets, so that after you test, you get a care packet. So these are some statistics from the Excelsior. They've tested up to 500. They have 16 positives, and they have a positive rate of about 3.23. Again, telling us what we already know. The next slide, please. So I want to go quickly now. So now we have the Latino Task Force Essential Services Hub. It's located here, and I don't know if you can see my background, but it's, it's the food hub, it's everything hub. And what we do is offer assistance with food, income relief, education, support, applying for Medi-Cal, CalFresh, CalWorks, medical referrals, employment and unemployment, small business support. These are some of the services that are offered on the second floor. Next slide, please. What we realized early on was that our community was being linked to death. Link here, link there, link there, link there. And that was not acceptable, because many of them may not have be tech savvy, and also you can't ask a link questions. So we knew right away that we needed to be on the front line, face to face. So here you have a picture of the second floor of Mission Language Vocational School. You could see that the tables are socially distanced, and on every single table there is hand sanitizer, disinfectant, and a roll of paper towels. So as soon as somebody leaves their appointment, we wipe down the chairs immediately. And also, as you see, everybody's wearing a mask. But this has been the most popular response to services. The very first day we opened, we had a line that was 4 blocks long, and we said, whoa, we can't do that. So they fill out an intake form, and then they're called for an appointment. So everything is very orderly and very organized. And even, next slide, please. Even before they come in, they have their temperature taken. If they have a high temperature, we tell them, we're sorry, we will call you and do a phone appointment with you. And then they're also personally escorted upstairs, so that no one is wandering around the buildings, and they're socially distanced while they're going up the stairs. So here are some of the CBO partners that provide much needed in-person services. So to the left, you have Mission Hiring Hall, and they're helping people find employment. And we're finding that our undocumented community has really been hit hard in terms of being able to find work. And then also in the background, you see Black Lives Matter, we definitely, the Latino Task Force has put out a statement immediately after George Floyd's death, and just is standing in solidarity with the African American and Black communities. So Black Lives Matter. Here to the right, you can see the computers up, and they're looking at housing, trying to help, fill out applications for the affordable housing that's going up in our community, and also with rental assistance. Next slide. Mission Food Hub, offering culturally relevant, nutritious food 3 days per week. Next slide, please. So here, the whole, there's our building again in the background. It's community culture. We've had lowriders, mariachis, and performers all come to the food hub to offer some cultura for people who are standing in line. And so this is one day where the lowriders came out to support. Next slide, please. Healthy produce boxes. So you can see we are able to get tons of boxes of produce. Each of these boxes will contain carrots, a bag of onions, cauliflower, lettuce, just a whole box of nutritious food. In addition to that, we've been able to get donations of milk, cheese, and butter. And on top of that, if you want to go to the next slide, we also offer culturally relevant food. So here, they also get a bag of beans, they get a bag of oatmeal, they get a bag of rice, and they get a package of masa trigo, which is corn. I don't know how to say corn masa. I can't say it in English. Which is like gold to our community, because with you could make tamales, you can make tortillas, you can make all types of different Latino countries' food out of the masa. And here's an example of early on where they were doing boxes and bags, and so next. And I just want to say that this Mission Food Hub, it so relies on volunteers. Many of the people who actually stood in line to receive a food box actually now come to volunteer and help with the sorting, help with the distribution. And that, again, is such beauty, because they're giving back. And we've even had senoras come and bring us food. Like one senora, she made tamales out of the masa that we gave her. Another one is, they make different things, and as appreciation and thanks. Next slide, please. So here, you have a mother with a baby, and you have a mother with, a couple of children, and these boxes are heavy. I can tell you that they probably weigh about 50 pounds, because even on certain days, we actually give them frozen chicken. So you have a gallon of milk, frozen chicken, rice and beans, and then all this produce. So we've actually started a campaign to buy carritos, the little laundry baskets that you might see, the community walking around with, to help them with the family, with people who don't realize how heavy this is. And the food hub started 1 day a week, about 500 families, and then probably within a week or two, it went to 3 days a week, feeding over 7,000 families. Next slide, please. And I'm coming to the end, I know. So I just want to share with you here, on the upper left-hand corner, you see Dolores Street Promotoras. They helped during the UCSF study, and we really are trying to look for job opportunities or, stipend support. Good morning, mijo. Support. Hi, good morning. To our community where we can. So any funding that we get, we try to equitably distribute it, and we don't have enough. This by here was through UCSF that these promotoras were stipend. Over here to the right is the Opportunities for All youth interns. Again, I want to thank Director Cheryl Davis for giving us positions here. And these are the young people who are giving back to their community. The young girl on the left has a temperature taker. And again, we screen people before they come into the building. And these young people love being part of this, love being who they truly are. So we're diverse and multi-generational. Next slide. I think there might be a couple more slides left. Next slide. So here, one of the things early on, when I said that our community was being linked to death, out of the communications committee, a subcommittee, the website committee came on, and I want to acknowledge Julio Lara, who works at Mission Housing, and he helped with the team develop a trilingual website so that people can go where all the resources are in one space, one-stop shop. And so we have the resources in Spanish and Maya and in English. How many more minutes do I have? 2, 3? One? Okay, great. Okay, so I'm not going to go to it. I did want to hyperlink this to show you the website, but I'm not going to do. You will love it. It's so beautiful. Next slide. Oh, I'm sorry. And then to the left is our banner that we have at our building. Well, as you're going to the next slide, that shows our website. So thank you for your time today and your attention. And this is a picture of some of us at the UCSF testing. And I want to just thank you for allowing me to share our just a little piece of insight to our story. Thank you again.
Valerie, I am a little overwhelmed right now just at the volume of work that you were doing. I guess what has impressed me too about your presentation is that you put a face on it and you acknowledge the humanity of each of the volunteers and each of the beautiful mosaic of people that you work with. We can't thank you enough. Part of our program is we have 3 community panelists. We call them faith panelists. Some of them are well known to you. And what we ask them to do is just to take a few minutes, 5 minutes, and just talk about how their work in the community is impacted. And they're going to ask a question of you for a response. Okay? Great.
Excellent.
Let's begin with Miguel Bustos, a dear close friend of mine who is the Senior Director for the Center for Social Justice at Glide. Miguel, born and raised in San Francisco, a member of the community, his achievements and accomplishments are many, and I just am so grateful that he is here to give a perspective from both Glide and his own work in the community and life in the community. Dear Miguel, the stage is yours.
Well, thank you so much, Michael. There's really nothing else to say. Valerie said it all. Valerie, who I've actually known since I was a baby. So we've known each other for—
You were babies together, right?
Right. But
thank you.
one of the things you all need to know about Valerie is that what you saw today is how she's always been. Someone who has looked out after the community, put the community first, and made sure to see who was not represented and brought them in, and did things that are in a way that are culturally sensitive and culturally enriching and powerful. So Valerie's one of those consistent leaders throughout her whole life. This is what she's about. So Valerie, thank you for what you do in the community. There's from the perspective that I have from Glide, we often say basically what Thomas Merton says: our job is to love others without stopping to inquire whether they are worthy or not. And for us at Glide, and my perspective, that is what community is all about. We have to love each other and not inquire whether they're worthy or not. And you'll see that what Valerie and so many people in the mission have done is really not asked questions, just said, hey, we're gonna be here. But we have to remember that there was a pre-COVID and there'll be a post-COVID. And COVID highlighted the inequities in our city. COVID highlighted the lack of care around health in our country. So what happens after is also equally important, because the racism, the misogyny, the anti-immigration efforts will still consist, especially if we keep this current government we have now. So the fact that Valerie and so many others have been able to set up an infrastructure that has been focused on the community is something to be honored and replicated. Because at the foundation of it, it's about strength as a community. And as people of faith, you know, as folks who run faith communities, you have the influence to help highlight this work. You have the influence and the moral authority to get people to join in this effort of loving people and not asking whether they're worthy or not. So, I mean, I just can't say enough. Valerie, you've demonstrated what those of us in the community have always known, that community and familia, respect for elders, the belief in the young people is so important. And, you know, I just want to end by saying that for all of us, especially those of us who are San Franciscans, you know, there's a prayer that's always attributed to St. Francis that I really take to heart and should be all of our guiding posts. And I know for Valerie, because I've known her for so long, this has been her life. That when there is hatred, we sow love. When there's injury, we pardon. When there's doubt, we have to have the faith. And when there's despair, especially during this times, we have to have the hope. Because when there's darkness, we will be that light during and post-COVID. And when there's sadness, we're going to look to people and bring them that joy. Because for us to understand is to be understood. And it's in that unconditional love that we give others that we also are loved. For it is in giving that we receive. And that's really what's about. So Valerie and Mario and so many others, thank you for what you do. And the only question I would have is, what can we do to help you, Valerie? You know, you have been shouldering this massive effort, and I've seen the lines. And to see people stand in line, different ages, men and women, the fact that they're going to get nutrients, but also hope is a massive task. And so the question I have for you is, what can we do to help you?
And be shameless in answering it.
Yeah, that is a difficult question. So thank you. It is a difficult question, and thank you, Miguel. And I appreciate you know, the acknowledgement, but I also want to say that, you know, that the Latino Task Force, I just happen to be a facilitator. I happen to move the energy and collect the energy so that people can do the work, you know, collectively. There are so many heroes and sheroes. There are beautiful committee chair people who are leading each and every committee. There are the volunteers. I just happen to be the mouthpiece of this. So I appreciate very much the compliments. And you're right. This is a way of life. It has always been a way of life for me. And so thank you very much, Miguel. And I do want to say, what can you do? You know, that there are things such as, you know, buying a little carrito, so that we have more carritos to give for people who can't, you know, who come on the bus. Donation link now set up on the website. There is also advocacy. I think that's really what we need. And I really want to be as diplomatic and professional, but I don't think that the city, we are doing what city government is supposed to do, what government, state and federal government are supposed to do. Government is meant to service, you know, offer services for people. They're supposed to care for its residents and the public. And, you know, they were unprepared for this pandemic, as many of us were. And so we need advocacy. We need advocacy for city government to support our efforts through funding. We need, whatever circles you're in, because oftentimes people in the community, especially communities of color, we don't always get access to circles where there are resources. And I will tell you that our strongest allies, in reality, speaking through a social equity lens, have been our white allies who have been able to speak up for us and say, hey, come on now, where's the funding? You need to help them with the resources. They're doing this, and don't assume that, it's not fair to think that, volunteering is going to cut it for the rest of our life, because many of them volunteer out of their heart, but, it's not fair to not receive any type of compensation. So I would say tell city government, I would tell them to respect the leadership of communities of color. And in particular, we are now 51% of COVID cases. The Latinos are, excuse me one second. Arturo, Shalom. Keep it down, you guys. Sorry about that. I'm at the food hub, at the testing hub. So we're setting up for testing right now, so excuse me. But anyway, I just want to say that we're 50 cases, but we definitely don't have 51% of the resources to help address this. So I don't know what else. It's very difficult. Like, how can
there will be other questions
so
coming
anywhere
up.
from volunteering to application.
Yeah. Let us move along. We are really blessed to have with us Reverend Monique Ortiz, who is the pastor of St. Maria and Marta Lutheran Church on South Van Ness, as well. Pastor Monique wears so many hats. She is involved with the Night Ministry, Open Cathedral, and she is a member of the board of directors of the San Francisco Interfaith Council. I'm a big fan. Pastor Monique, you are on the ground in the trenches, a member of the community. Please share with us your perspective and then pose a question to Valerie.
Muchas gracias. Thank you, Michael, for this opportunity to be here with all of you. And Valerie, I am deeply grateful for you, for the Latino Task Force, for all of the volunteers, all of the employees, and what you've done on the ground. My experience, though, I pastor a church, Santa Maria y Santa Marta, St. Mary Martha, in the Mission, and our largest congregation is the Latino congregation. And what I've experienced, just walking around the streets with the San Francisco Night Ministry I serve, as Michael mentioned, and also in the Mission, and at our church, I mean, I don't know how many more members we're going to lose from the Latino community of our church, because so many have had to move already far away. And right now, yes, they can attend service through Zoom, but they have had to move far away in some cases. And the problem is that, as we all know, there's multiple families due to the high rents and housing market in the Bay Area and in San Francisco as well, especially. Multiple families live in 1 or 2 rooms.
Yes.
Multiple families have lost jobs. Members of each family losing jobs, of course, unemployed, our undocumented siblings are not getting unemployment. And I realized that there has been some relief financially for our undocumented siblings. However, I know many, many people who, because they were not connected to one of the organizations, or because there was just no more funding, or it was impossible to get through like Catholic Charities when that help came in, they're left without anything. There's just multiple struggles. I have members who are in their 40s, and because they're undocumented, they're homeless, and they couldn't get into any more of into the shelters, as we know. They closed, or they were not allowing anymore. I mean, it's the crisis, the problems. I know that the Latino Task Force can't do at all, but I just wonder what the answer is here, because people do go. I mean, they're starving. There's a member from the English congregation that gave his stimulus check and doubled it to help our folks and just folks in the community. But that flew within a week or so. Some people are very afraid to go get tested. Some people have to work. I mean, they're risking, yes, they risk the community's health, but they're risking their lives as well, because they also have to provide for family, not just here, but in Mexico or in Latin American countries, in their own country. It is a matter of life and death, and not just because of COVID, but it's survival. It's getting medical care. It's fear, fear of accessing services, or confusion, or what you said, Valerie. You know, you have that second floor where folks can go, and because they're not, it's just so confusing for them to, for many of my folks at least, and folks I know on the ground, to go online and fill out forms and or make the phone calls, or they're afraid because of the public charge. So one of the things that you mentioned was education, but I just find that there's just so much more. I know that we all need to come together, and we as a little tiny church, we house the Dolores shelter there as well, in our church, but we want to help as well, and yet I feel frustrated because how do we get the word out? And you're only one building, and you only have so many people. That's one question, and the other is how do we tell our folks how to access services? You know, there's many communities. You mentioned that they are grassroots Latino communities in the mission trying to help. Even Hillary Ronan, right, is trying to put people who are at high risk or test positive into hotels, even give them money. And I really love the work of Supervisor Ronan and what she has tried to do. But there's just so much more. So many people who aren't accessing anything and don't know how, or they're very afraid, including testing. Single mothers I have who were staying in a shelter, and I mean, the list is endless, and the crisis is only going to get deeper, as we know. There are more people and more families and more individuals and more undocumented siblings and Latinos who will be unhoused and will be sleeping in the streets. What do we do?
A lot to respond to.
Yes, what I would just say is this. What we offer at the Latino Task Force is a model. And to take this model and to see if it can be duplicated, but of course, you know, adjusted to whoever's community needs there are. But this is just a community model that we want to share with others, how we do it. Take what you can from it, duplicate it, tweak it to whatever fits. I think that's what we're trying to do here, is share this experience of how we came together with really nothing except our heart and soul and whatever, you know, skills we had. So I want to definitely acknowledge everything that you're saying. The rental assistance, you know, it has no funding. Like you said, you go on that link, you know, it's Catholic Charities, their website, you know, crashed the first 15 minutes when they opened up. We absolutely realize that. And just to keep a real story, you know, if someone owes $3,000 a month, in fact, there is a real person who's come to Roberto Hernandez, who is, you know, who we call the mayor of the mission. And he says, look, he goes, I owe rent for $3,000 a month. It has been 6 months. 6 times 3,000 is $18,000. There is no way in the world that he could ever repay that. I don't think anybody on this call could pay $18,000 in back rent at any moment. So I think that we are going to have another wave of crisis with lots of people point or another. The other thing too that I want to say is, you know, Supervisor Ronan was beautiful. Out of the UCSF study, she developed legislation, which was right to recover, so that people could have financial means to get paid, so they could take 2 weeks off, particularly undocumented and those who don't have sick leave or vacation pay and so forth and so on. The problem was that money was depleted quickly, and there was a bureaucracy that was set up to access that funding. They have deplenished that funding, they've replenished it, but guess what? There's a backlist of those who didn't get it the first time. So you're absolutely right. We need advocacy with the city to increase these pots of money to help people. I also want to say about testing, you're absolutely right. Our community doesn't want to test because they don't want to stop working. You know, if they have to work to support their family, why do they want to know they're positive? They don't want to know. Or they're also scared for public charge. You know, will this go to immigration and just all types of things? And if they test positive, where are the resources? That's why we say we need our community wellness teams funded throughout the city so we can support them to isolate, to quarantine, whatever it needs. So I think that's all I can say. I agree with you that there is a huge crisis. There's going to be a crisis after crisis. And especially in education. We just heard a story about these Latino families living in trailers out in Bayview. They have no Wi-Fi, they have no Chromebooks, but they got kids. What are we going to do with that? Where's the, you know, I just, you know, I don't want to be critical in a negative sense, but I want to say that the city just does not have the capacity, and the community is coming up with community solutions to do it. I was so upset. I said, you know what, we're going to go out there right now, assess what they need. We're going to take some educational packets for different grade levels and at least have something for the kids, figure out what they need, figure out how we can connect them. So it is very overwhelming, but we can't stop what we're doing. We have to call it what it is. And I'll be completely honest with you, because Miguel said it, it is a racial equity issue. It is very much, and we're getting the short end of the stick all the way around. So thank you for your work. Thank you for calling out the crisis. I appreciate it. And all I can say is, you know, we can offer what we have. And you're right, a lot of people are not connected to the resources, but our community is also a very communal. Like, once somebody knows about a resource, they'll tell and the word gets out, because we do want to connect people to resources. And I know it's 9:37, so I know we have to get going.
Valerie, we have one more. We have one
yes.
more presenter, and this person is not unknown to you. He is an ally and a friend and a compatriot, and that is Mario Paz, the Executive Director of Good Samaritan Family Resource Center, who also serves as the Vice Chair of the Immigrant Rights Commission and is the Vice Chair of our board. Mario, you are in the heart of the mission. Would you please give us your perspective and then the final question to Valerie?
Sure. Thank you, Michael. Valerie. I'd like to, in the faith tradition, sort of share with you how I would describe Valerie and her work and her leadership. I think of the universal parable of the Good Samaritan, and there's a message there of the unlikely stranger helping the stranger. But for me, the real message of the Good Samaritan is that the unlikely stranger helped the stranger above all expectations. And above all expectations is how I would describe Valerie and how deeply she cares for the community. And it's a model for us to follow. I would describe Valerie as someone who doesn't mince words. You just heard her say, I saw a problem in the Bayview, it's unacceptable, I need to go help. Above all expectations. So that's what we've all been inspired by her and the other members of Latino Task Force, how we need to support our community. And I want to give you some greater context in terms of what's been shared. You've heard about the disproportionate impact of COVID in our community. We're above 50% of the impacted cases, where 80% of those have been hospitalized. But there's other data, we're more than 50% of the demographic population has been unemployed, who've lost their sources of income. We're more than 50% of our young people, of our children, who have disengaged in school. You've probably heard 6,000 students in San Francisco Unified School District were not able to pivot to distance learning in the spring. And out of those 6,000 students, more than half are children of the Latino community. So this is crisis upon crisis. It's much more than a crisis, it's a disaster. That's the context. We're on top of the list the kind of list we don't want to be on. But literally what's happening to our community is we're unemployed, we're hungry, we're sick, and we're dying. That's the context, that's the reality right now. I think that's what we'll need. It's the things that overwhelm us, right? These are the things that keep us up at night. And so Valerie's absolutely right. If anything we've learned about this pandemic and these crises is that they don't impact people equally, even a pandemic. The structural inequality, racial injustice that our community is feeling is something we've never experienced before. So I want to just sort of put that context in terms of what are the issues that is motivating the Latino task force and all those beautiful people you saw in the pictures to come out and put their lives at risk because they know what is at stake. It really is a disaster. If you think in our faith traditions also, if you think of all the disasters, whether it's a natural disaster stuff, there's this immediate first response, right? There's first responders. And very often it's people of faith that respond. They join the first responders. They are the first on the line, the community-based organizations. And so I challenge our faith community to follow the lead of the Latino task force, to model people like Valerie and Reverend Ortiz, to do the work above all expectations. It's what our faith traditions ask us to do. It's to help those that you most unlikely would help. Again, above all expectations. That is what I think motivates Valerie each and every day. And those of us that are there to support her. And my question, Valerie, is, and this is gonna be a very different question. We all are feeling the weight of this, right? I know you feel it. I know Monique, I know all of us as a community feel the weight of this moment of crisis that we're living through. And Valerie, what keeps you going? How do you take care of yourself? Because we forget about that. We carry a lot with us. I know you carry a lot. I know Michael carries a lot. Everyone on this call is feeling this. How are you taking care of yourself? Because I think we all need to hear that.
There we go. Okay, thank you. I just want to mention really quickly that you raised a good point. We're going to lose a generation of young people through this education. Hi. Sorry, let me say good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning. Oh, Supervisor Haney and all. Oh, thank you. Hi. Hi, pleased to meet you.
She is.
Sorry about that. Yeah, I've got to get off in about 3 minutes because we have to do our morning circle. But anyway, back to that. We're going to lose a generation of our young people through this pandemic because through education. And I also want to acknowledge, this has been the focus of the Latino Task Force and the Latino community, but I also want to acknowledge that our indigenous community has been hit horribly. They have no access to hospitals on the reservations, maybe a health clinic, but that is in no way can it address their medical needs. And it hits hard. I also want to acknowledge our African American community. The Black community may not have as many cases, but guess what? They die more than we do. And so they have a high death rate from COVID. So I just want to make sure that we understand that we're in solidarity, and we acknowledge the communities of color have been impacted. So I just wanted to say that much. And then in terms of self-care, you're right. I do work anywhere from 12 to 14 hours a day. You're absolutely right. But what I do is on the weekends, Saturday and Sunday, that is my commitment and dedication to my family. You know, my husband, you know, he's Native American. He, you know, comes from the American Indian movement. So he understands we carry the same value system, you know, and he's also an essential worker. My son works at Trader Joe's. You know, he's an essential worker. He's given to the community. So we're a family who gives to the community. But come those weekends, I do not take calls. I do not take texts. I do not check my email until Sunday night to send out the agenda for the Latino Task Force phone call. But other than that, I make sure that I do that. And I just want to say what drives us and what drives many of us is I am in a vulnerable population. I am a diabetic, but I am also in an entitled position. I have a job. I have a husband who's healthy, a son who is healthy. Who the heck do I think I am if I'm going to sit home and just work remotely? That is unacceptable. That is where that is what drives us. We are privileged in the way and how we can give back, and we can do nothing but be of service, because as many of you pointed out, our community is in multiple crises. So I just want to say that, and I need to get off in about 1 minute. But I did want to thank you all. I hope, you know, this presentation and, you know, stimulates discussion amongst your group. I'm happy to come back and, you know, answer any more questions. I want to thank you again, Michael, for your patience with me, because I know that, and everybody, Sharon, and also Cynthia, for your patience with me. I hope I came through for you today. And I want to thank each one of you and bless each and every one of you to be protected so you can continue to do what you need to do.
Before you get off the line, allow us to thank you. What you did today in a finite period of time was to cram in a whole lifetime of work. And I on behalf of the Interfaith Council, I want to say thank you to you, Valerie. If our prayers count for anything, you have them. You've shown us the best of what San Franciscans can do, and you are an inspiration to be emulated. We just pray for you in your good work, and thank you. And you have given us a lot to think about, and more than anything, you've conveyed the overwhelming nature of how one sector has been impacted. So God bless you, and thank you in the midst of your busyness to be able to articulate what you did today. We also want to thank Miguel and Pastor Monique and Mario for their important contributions, as well as Heather Lee in the beginning, and of course, Kaushik. We want to welcome everybody and invite you to come back next week. We have John Arnst, who is the Director of Elections, who is going to be speaking about voting and safe voting in the times of this pandemic. And I think that's going to be a very important and timely conversation for us to have now. And with that, we thank you all for being here, and this concludes this morning's program. God bless you.
Thank you. Thank you for your prayers. Thank you.
Wow.
Just the family.
That was incredible. Michael, when you said you had the A team on the panel, you were not kidding.
This is, I mean, it proves that there's not enough time to talk about the people who are most impacted.
Yeah.
If there's one emerging need, I mean, you probably picked up a lot of emerging needs.
Yes,
I mean,
absolutely.
Well, you know what, but I also